mornings, would get up and go striper fishing, and Waldo would be up at 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. He'd have all the muffins made for the restaurant, some of the best muffins I've ever tasted. He would have already been in and fed the chickens. We'd meet him in the chicken barns, and I think he must have had, the number 20,000 comes to mind, or maybe it was 10,000 chickens. And I think that was probably one of the last chicken operations in town. My dad's stories growing up, the fields down behind Flossie's. I remember the stories of him as a boy. He'd go down and he plowed down in those fields all one day with a single bottom plow with one horse, and he would brag about the fact that he never touched a rock because the farmland was that good. And the other thing he was quite proud of was his father, Ernest, bred into the Baker Farm bulls, and they had some cows that were putting out tremendous quantities of milk, and that was something that he was quite proud of back then. There were 4 boys in the family, and I think the farm was sold in the 1950s maybe? Yeah. All 4 boys served time in the service, and basically they couldn't get off that farm fast enough because they had to milk by hand, and it was very, very hard work. And they'd be up in the morning and have to milk the cows before they went to school. Of course, when they went to school, they didn't smell all that good because what was on their shoes. And I can remember Dad saying a lot of nights he would go out and he'd sleep in the barn with the cows because it was warmer to sleep out there, snuggle up to a cow, than it was to sleep in the house. So, some of the other stories, lots of other stories, but those are probably the ones that are agricultural related. So anyway, that's...
Thank you, Pete. You know, I remember Franny Wentworth telling me that you could always tell when the Bakers primarily lived down in like Winchester in Massachusetts and not at the farm in Stratham, but when they were in town, you could always tell when Mr. Baker, who was always known as the boss, was in town because he would be cruising around in his Pierce silver Arrow with a very long cigar. Who else has got Bob?
I don't know that I'll either.
Yeah.
Well, usually I find my voice carries. I'm Bob Goodrich. I'm a newcomer, not related to anybody up here, so I can't give you any stories. I'll maybe give you a little different slant on things. When I got out of college, we moved to Chester, my grandparents' place. My wife, Irma, is a city girl. I had an opportunity to raise chickens for Nichols Poultry Farm. At that time, this was back in when 1955, roughly. There was a major problem going around called Newcastle, and Nichols' approach was to have a series of small farms with 2,000, 2,500 chickens scattered around the area. And we just fit that situation because my grandfather had raised chickens. So we started in, plus we had to clean up the old poultry house. And we ended up with about 2,500 birds. They came in as day-old chicks, and we had to take care of them. Now, what they were doing, they would come in and inoculate these chicks after about 4 or 5 weeks. Then a few weeks later, they would come in, and my wife thought these guys were crazy because they were adults. They would crawl around on the floor in this chicken house trying to see if any of these birds were sneezing. Now, we had, 3 kids at that point? 2. All right, 2. My age is showing. The kids thought, things were great, these little chicks, they were running around. But this is what they were doing, and once these birds reached 10 weeks, the guy would come in with his truck and crates, they'd take them all. Then I had a job of cleaning everything up for the next batch, would be in 2 or 3 weeks. And every 10 weeks, we were going through this. And the outfit was Nichols. Doug mentioned how things are changing. I'm going to ramble a little bit. We have Salt Box Farm, small place, compared to these guys. Our total farm is only 36 acres. It used to be a Wigan farm. Andrew Wigan, I believe, was one of the original owners of it. And seems to me, Pete, you said that our place went all the way down to the river.
Probably did at one time.
Yeah, one time, way back. So it was a fair-sized piece of property initially. But we're down to 36 acres, and 30 of that is in a conservation easement. We basically raised blueberries, raspberries. We did raise veggies, but as time went on, I got old and my wife got tired. And the thing we could let go was the vegetables, so we concentrate basically on blueberries. Raising crops. Everybody has heard pesticides. Everybody seems to get uptight about pesticides. Well, if we didn't use pesticides, now I know organics is the big thing today. There's room for it, but there's room for the rest of us that use pesticides. If we didn't, some things that affect blueberries or any other crop, you probably wouldn't want to eat the product. So this is why we use pesticides. Another nasty word, well, yeah, no, 2 words, I guess. Genetically modified. Now, there's more and more of this. We might just as well talk about it because everybody else is talking about it. Now, I look at things a little bit different. You know, I don't look at all like this young fella right here. I don't look anything like Mark. Now, why is this, you suppose? Don't look like Doug or Fred. Oh, Cameron. They're better looking than I am anyhow, so. But, you know, this is a case of genetics. We're crossbreeding, and that's a form of genetic modification. You'll have a frown on your face, you don't quite understand it. But, you know, it's a very common thing going on all the time. And so this is why I don't get uptight about it. What else do I want to say? I don't either, I'll quit there.
Thank you, Bob. You're right, agriculture is changing in so many ways and so many directions. Who else do we have back here? Oh, it's coming. I think this would be the last one.
Well, my name's Alan Batchelder. I grew up in town. I know most of the people on the panel here. All this talk here about growing up in an agricultural community. It does really does affect how one really looks at life. I'm gonna probably my first memory I have is sitting on the baler of my grandfather's truck baling machine, going around the fields. I grew up over on the Winnicott River, and that's seen a lot of changes in the past 10 years for sure. I'll start probably, let's say, in the 80s anyways. Growing up, my grandfather sold this herd in '59. Then it was rented out to a neighbor who tended the fields until the 70s. And around 1980, my oldest brother and his first wife came back, and they were looking for a place to farm. Well, my grandfather said, well, here's this place, farming. And they started doing a little something with it. At the time, my brother's first wife became pregnant, and I was living away at the time, so I kind of figured, well, they're going to need a little help there. So for Christmas that year, I gave myself away for a season. I said, I'll come back, I'll help you on the farm, get things, do what I can. And that lasted on and off for about 25 years. It started raising vegetables in the 80s, and that continued on right through around 2000. He was probably one of the first organic farms here in town, and there was a lot of workers in and out. You met a lot of great people, a lot of young people with great idealistic ideas, and just experiencing that, really could shake you to the core of, just what it was to be, growing up in an agricultural community, and how wonderful it was to share these ideas, to just express, what farming is. It's an experience that I will always cherish. Around, like I say early 2000s, after my brother's first wife and he divorced, the farm had to be broken up. Part of it split off, sold for development, and that was kind of the slight downfall of that part of history. What do I want to say? There's a lot I want to say. It was just to see that happen. Doug, you mentioned that, dealing with, I guess, Hutton's comment about, living in a town but having to move away and, still feeling like a stranger, even though, you're just moving, 15 miles away. But, this is one thing, personally I've noticed is, I'm still living in town, I'm still living in the same neighborhood I grew up, but, you still feel sometimes like a stranger just seeing all these changes here. And that's kind of a sad thing to experience, but, on the positive side, I see, just the cycle repeating itself. My grandfather farmed, my brother farmed, I was helped out, with that, and now the farm was sold to sounds like a very energetic couple with kids who apparently really love the place, and this is something that's going to repeat itself, and this is something I think this town, this area really needs to, grasp onto and really appreciate that, it's something that we should not lose. We should really concentrate on keeping it alive.
Great way to end this. The emphasis on youth. We are continually inspired by the young people who come and work on our farm. The fact, that we all continue to see these younger generations involved in agriculture in many ways, want to be involved in agriculture, and so indeed, there's a continuing future. Plus, you're young enough that your first memories were with a baler. So, Becky, I really want to thank everybody. This has been great, and I hope there'll be some more conversations around the cookies and brownies.
Just a few words before you go. We had to unexpectedly rent this mostly functioning sound system And we did not have that in our budget, so if any of you would like to contribute towards the sound system, and hopefully we're getting a fairly decent recording from this that will go to the Historical Society and so forth, so we'll all have a memory of this evening. Anyway, we have a contribution box by the door as you go out. Also on the same table, it's some postcards that the Heritage Commission is selling. These are the first three of which we hope will be a continuing series of views of Stratham appearing on postcards. And the profits from the sale of the postcards are going to be contributed toward the town tercentenary celebration. So I hope you'll buy postcards, but not only that, if any of you are skillful photographers, we're always looking for good, appropriate pictures. And we'd be delighted to have a look at your photographs, and maybe you'll get famous and be on one of our postcards. And I also we were having some good conversations about markets, and I just want to remind everybody that tomorrow is the Winter Farmers Market at Exeter High School. And
10 to 2.
Pardon me?
10 to 2.
10 to 2.
10 to 2, right, 10 to 2. And get there early because the good stuff goes fast. Anyway, I think at the end of this evening, none of us are going to feel like strangers. And I'd like a big round of applause for everybody up here, and plus everybody who got up.